Welcome on board the Rich Planet Starship, broadcasting from somewhere high above the Earth. I'm Richard D. Hall. In tonight's show, we will be discussing a very disturbing phenomenon, that of animal mutilation, and the controversial subject of human mutilation. The show was recorded in March 2010 and was the first Starship show produced, so there are one or two technical problems, mainly the fact that one of the cameras wasn't working. Nevertheless, this hopefully will not detract too much from the show. We believe from evidence which has been uncovered over the last decade that there has been a government cover-up from the highest levels on this issue for quite some time. DEFRA, that's the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, have an efficient strategy in place involving the monitoring of vets, farms and members of the public. We believe from information given to us by witnesses that DEFRA have agents within animal health positions throughout the country who have a secret dual role unbeknown to the local authorities and vets. These agents are used to report any suspected animal mutilation cases to a central DEFRA-controlled outfit. DEFRA agents then swiftly remove any evidence before it can be examined by independent researchers. Throughout this show, we will be screening some images of mutilated animals and some of a human being. If you are sensitive to this kind of thing, please switch off now. We realize that this show is sometimes broadcast when people are eating their breakfast. We recommend that these people hurry up and finish your cornflakes to avoid any trepidation. Having said that, we have limited the selection of images to a mere fraction of those in our possession and chosen just a few to demonstrate important aspects of the phenomenon. Just in the last few weeks, there have been cases of mutilated seals turning up on the shores of the UK. Since late 2008, a total of 52 mutilated seals have been found along the east coast, from St Andrews Bay in Scotland down to the North Norfolk coast. The injuries on some of the seals is bizarre to say the least. Some have had corkscrew-shaped deep cuts along the length of their bodies. The consensus of opinion among experts, including Dr. Dave Thompson of the Sea Mammals Research Unit, is that boat propellers are not the cause of the injuries, as there has been no bone damage. Also, seals are shy creatures, and it is rare for them to be killed by boat propellers, certainly not in such high numbers. The cuts start at the left side of the lower chin and work rearwards with a peeling action. Considerable cutting force is applied without interruption. Seal blubber is very tough, and the cuts were made with no jagged edges or breaks. An RSPCA vet in Norfolk has done post-mortems on 12 seals, and one post-mortem has been done by the VLA in Bury St Edmunds. The RSPCA vet said the cuts looked like they had been caused by some kind of machinery with great force, and also that the seals were in perfect health before the mutilation wounds were inflicted. So far, the authorities are baffled and do not have an explanation. I hope to bring you a report on these cases in the near future as more information is uncovered. In tonight's show, I talk to David Cayton about the bizarre mystery of animal mutilation. David was a photographer in the RAF for 10 years, then worked for British Aerospace for 28 years, rising to become the head of the non-destructive testing division. Since retiring, he has spent 13 years investigating strange animal deaths and spoke to me on the Starship in March about his research. Well, it's good to have you back on board the ship, David.
Thank you very much, Richard.
Okay.
It's good to be beamed up again.
Good.
I'm enjoying it more this time. I got a bit vertigo last time.
Really?
Yes.
I'll have to have a word with the technicians then. Okay, so you've come along today, David, to talk about the animal mutilation phenomenon. Yeah. And viewers may already know about the film Silent Killers, that we made in May 2009.
I do hope so.
An hour-long documentary which charts a lot of David's and members of the APFU's work into the very strange animal mutilation phenomenon.
Yes. Yeah.
And I mentioned the APFU there, David. Would you like to just tell us a bit about the APFU? What does that stand for and what's it all about?
Well, it's a name that one of the members, Phil Hoyle, actually coined. We had kicked some ideas around. There was 3 or 4 of us, no, 5 originally, people we got together after I'd been looking at the mutes on my own for 3 or 4 years, and got Phil interested because he'd seen something in UFO magazine, Quest UFO magazine, and we decided to pool our efforts, and Phil saw connections with the work he was doing with abductions possibly. So he decided his best name was Animal Pathology Field Unit, and we chose that because of the pathology umbrella, because we had I'd had a professor of pathology in Manchester University, Tony Fremont, who kindly agreed to help me and look at some animal bodies. Okay. So we've been running since about 2001 doing that. And
so your group has been investigating strange animal deaths, injuries, disappearances, all that kind of thing, and the injuries are of a nature that don't seem to be carried out by normal animal predation. Now, could you just describe, because there's a sort of core group of you, the 3 of you now mainly in the APFU, isn't it? And you know, you've had some issues over the last sort of year or so. Would you like to expand on that, David?
So that we had some various views and disagreements about who might be doing these mutilations, and the main issue, I guess, was the different viewpoints on the likelihood of human mutilations being done by the same agency who were doing the animal mutilations.
Because some people seem quite happy to, you know, postulate about strange things happening to animals, but as soon as it gets a little bit closer to home, it's suggested that they're doing it to human beings. It's a whole new ball game, isn't it, David?
Well, it certainly is, because the whole level of fright and fear, I guess, changes dramatically.
Yes.
It's one thing for a beast of the field who we raise to kill and eat, being killed strangely, and these mutilations taking place, which people can sort of live with that. Although a lot of people don't like it.
Yes. I've
found in ufology, particularly people in crop circles studies, who find it objectionable. But the human side is more of a problem.
Yes, and that is something that certainly Phil and Mike, who are members of the APFU, would probably disagree with you on. They don't think it's a human phenomenon. They believe that the evidence that has been presented so far is perhaps shaky, they would say. And I do want to get them on the show to put their case.
Yes,
so that would be, you know, just to see where they're coming from on that.
Yeah. Well,
we will talk about the human mutilation phenomena later on in this show.
Yes, fine. Yeah.
Okay, and if we talk about the evidence itself, what are the characteristic traits, David, just briefly before we move on to some cases?
Well, they're always pretty much the same. Often there's no blood, or the blood is being changed in the carcass, and there's usually very little evidence of it. There's certainly not blood all around the wounds and on the ground, and none of the animal owners has ever found any. So the blood basically is missing or has been changed in some way and then removed. And then you get the various wounds and injuries starting at the head end. The most common thing is a strip to the jaw, usually usually left side. More often than not. Why that is, I've no idea. And it's stripped clean right to the very bone, and the edges of the cuts around the flesh and the skin of the animal is very neat and tidy. Sometimes it extends around to the snout. The teeth never seem to be touched. The other next organ is the tongue, and often the tongue is completely missing, or right from the back of the root, or there's a strip, maybe 2 or 3 centimetres from the tip end, but cut sort of diagonally. And then you will find an eye cleanly removed, or both eyes. One of the ears usually, and again usually the left, or sometimes both ears, and often cropped right down to the scalp. and then you'll find holes in the body and a lot of organs removed, quite small holes in some cases. The animal, in fact, is devoid of any organs entirely in some cases. Limbs are removed sometimes, a tail very cleanly docked and through the joints in the bone, and sometimes there's a complete decapitation, and again cleanly through the IV joint in the spine. With no mess, and then at the back end you'll find genitals cleanly removed.
So essentially they show procedures which are not carried out with normal animal predation. That's
no, certainly not.
Yes.
No.
Okay. Just to go through briefly some of the alleged or the proposed explanations that people give, that it is a satanic cult or a secret military project. How would you answer those claims, David?
Well, the cults, the people who have these sort of ceremonies, they tend to go for fowl, to sacrifice birds and cut the head off. They wouldn't go normally for a four-legged animal, and they've been quoted on that when they've been challenged by organisations like in America. And again, if they were doing it, it would make no sense to steal a carcass, an animal should say. You've got to catch it first, which is very difficult in the field. I mean, the farmers have trouble to corner an animal to give it some treatment, even with the help of the farm dogs.
And one thing I find particularly interesting is the fact that nobody's ever been caught, no human being has ever been caught or seen perpetrating these incidents. And there's an item in one of Timothy Good's books, Unearthly Disclosure, I think it is, where he describes, I think it's a cow or a bull, that is actually a farmer witnesses something happening to the animal and it's being dragged backwards by some kind of invisible force field over a distance. And you can't see what's actually pulling the animal, and you can hear a very faint sort of electrical humming sound, and then the following day he finds this cow mutilated with the classic mutilation injuries. And you think, well, it's some kind of extreme covert operation in that whatever's doing it is perhaps even invisible or able to make their craft invisible or whatever is carrying it out.
Yes. And there are other cases where farmers have staked fields out, on 2 occasions we know about, with shotguns, hoping to catch the perpetrator who's doing it. And they've not seen anything, and in the night, daylight comes, and then 100 yards or so in front of them, there's another dead lamb or sheep lying there with the mutilations, and they haven't seen a thing.
And if we just move on to the fact that there has been some recent cases in the UK, one in Manchester or near Manchester, I believe, last year, and somebody sent me an email, a picture of a sheep, mutilated sheep with a classic jaw strip injury. Would you care to elaborate on that one, David? Because I sent you the information on that.
Well, again, it's a superb shot. It's taken on a camera phone, but very good quality, and the jaw strip is absolutely classic. It looks as though the tongue, the mouth is slightly open, so the tongue might be in place. And there was some injury again at the back end, which the 2 guys who were out walking near Watergrove Reservoir, which is near Wardle in Lancashire, so it's just sort of on the Lancashire border in Greater Manchester, thought that the hole at the back was similar to one of the cases we show in Silent Killers.
Right.
They didn't know who the farmer was.
So it was Silent Killers that had alerted this individual to the fact that it might be...
I'm looking at your website, yes.
And
so that was good.
With regards to the jaw strip injury, I actually showed some pictures of that injury on a CD that I was handing out to various farmers in the Hexham region, and 2 farmers said, oh, well, a badger's done that. That's done by a badger. But you were explaining to me earlier about what a badger is interested in when it finds an animal carcass.
Well, they like the favourite farmers have said this to me. I'm not an expert on what predators do. This has come from farmers direct, and they don't like the badgers because they're a pest to them, apart from the TB problem. And the badger, they say, have very sharp claws, and they rip the chest open, particularly on lambs, and the heart and the liver is the favourite morsel. So they wouldn't bother chewing around the mouth area with very little meat. Well, you know, there's no virtue in that. And,
Yes.
and a lady who first reported this sort of jaw strip to me was quite near...
Alison Kirkbride, was it?
No, Alison Hall.
Right. Okay.
I'm sorry, it was Hall Farm.
Hall Hill Farm, was it?
Hall Farm, up in Whittonstall, near Consett. And she was an expert, and she dealt with sheep all her life, and even lectured on sheep husbandry at a college in Durham, I think.
Okay.
And she reported this to me, and she said, I've never seen this in my life before, this jaw strip. And there was other injuries to the ewe, a half-born calf, which was a breech birth. You know, the head gets locked in the vulva, and the ewe mother died, and they went to collect it the following day and found the head was missing on the lamb now, and the ewe had a very peculiar cut of skin and flesh round one of the legs, right from the hock down to the bottom.
Okay, then, David.
It was like a sock, it was like an ankle sock.
Yes.
So,
right.
So she dismisses the idea. I mean, if anyone was going to say it was a predator like a badger, it would have been her.
Right, well, we're going to take a short commercial break now, David, and we're going to be talking about some more cases, indeed, when we come back. So stay tuned and don't go away. Welcome back on board the Starship. I'm talking to animal mutilation expert David Cayton, and before the break we were talking about the case near Manchester, which was in fact only 4 miles from Todmorden, which is a very famous UFO hotspot where... Tell us about it, David.
Yes, well, apart from lots of UFO sightings in that area, there's the famous case of ex-PC Alan Godfrey, who had his abduction experience there. But in 2002, responding to one of the Peel adverts in the Farmer's Guardian, a farmer lady rang me from a place called Lumberts, which is sort of a mile from the centre of Todmorden, and this is only 4 miles from the Wardle Reservoir, from the case of October last year.
October 2009.
Yeah. And again, they had a ewe which had the jaw strip, some throat damage as well, tongue missing, and one of the ears, and an eye. And then we went to investigate that. A friend, Robert Hulse, came with me and took some movie footage, which is in Silent Killers. And despite them promising to ring me if they found any more, they had in fact 2 other cases within a couple of months, exactly the same. So I found it rather interesting that with just 4 miles distance between the 2 cases, there might be...
So this adds weight to the theory that they're interested in very specific zones in the country.